Hey everybody, welcome back to me ranking every single unit in Wargame Red Dragon. I'm not tired, don't worry. This is Planes Part 3. We left off with the F111C. That rhyme was not planned, but I'm gonna roll with it. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else left to mention, so let's continue, right? With the F4E Phantom 2. It wouldn't really be that, well, it's bad. It wouldn't be that bad if you got two of them on elite, but even then, it would be not particularly good. The main reason why it costs like 90 points is because it carries so many missiles. If it carried like, let's say, 2 AIM-7Fs and 3 AIM-9s or 4 AIM-9s, this would probably be cheaper and have better veterancy options, and of course, Eugen being consistent, it probably should have 2 on elite anyway, but like if this had fewer missiles and was like 80 points and 3 on elite or something, would probably be, you know, not too shabby, or 3 on veteran at least, but 3 on hardened with this loadout, one of the worst ASFs, like quote unquote proper ASFs in the game, I reckon. Unfortunately though, one of the very few ASFs you get in blue for Marines, so if you play that deck, you might be sort of forced to run this if you don't just want to rely on Tomcats. That said, honestly, I can only give this the D tier. There's like not a lot. It has low ECM. Like, you know, not amazing ECM is kind of, you know, expected, but there's just nothing that is like shining. You know, it has a, you know, low end. It's still a Vulcan, but it has low end Vulcan, i.e., only 30% accuracy and not so much range. You know, if you compare this to the Hornet, right? You see the range and accuracy difference. It is decently fast. It doesn't have an amazing turn radius. The short range missiles are pretty mediocre at best. The long range missiles, it has a decent HE, but yeah, you know, F-18A Hornet. Hold up, is it the same name as the other American Hornet? It is the exact same name. Yeah, hold up, let me just edit this a bit. So this one, it is 4 15 HE bombs, not a horrible payload, but when you only get 2 and you have to pay 125 points for it, very underwhelming. I can't stress enough how huge the difference between 4 15 HE bombs and 4 20 HE bombs is. Because the thing with well, any HE gun, but like any, you know, area of effect HE gun, like artillery, mortars, etc. is, higher HE doesn't only mean you deal more damage if you hit, but it also increases the area of effect, right? The you know, the area where you deal damage. So you get 2 effects. You hit a bigger area and you deal more damage. So you get 2 for 1. So that's why this is honestly more on par with like not quite 120 HE bomb, but like 122-ish HE bomb. This is just crazy how huge the difference is. You know, this is 60 HE in total, and in most scenarios just worse than, like, you know, let me put it this way, 2 20 HE bombs significantly better than 4 15 HE bombs in virtually any scenario. So yeah, not a very good. It's like reasonably survivable, right? It is an okay helo hunter, although if you want a helo hunt, you want if you're that fast, you want at least have a somewhat okay turn radius. But yeah, like if you have no other choice, sure, it's okay. But like, yeah, it's just okay, and that's it. Harriers, I went over this last time, and I once again forgot to open the armory tools, so sorry for that. But the Twin Aiden is a Vulcan stat clone. You know, ignore the rate of fire. It rolls damage just as often as the Hornet, the Vulcan does. And if you don't know, the Vulcan and its stat clones are essentially the best guns you can have on planes in terms of anti-plane guns, right? Ignoring like the AP guns. So the guns are alright, but they all have, as you can see, not the amazing accuracy and not the best range. So if you're gonna go helo hunting, they have the same range. Although this one only has a normal Aiden. That's actually, let me actually check. So the Twin Aiden, yep, same rate of fire, and the normal Aiden has half the rate of fire. Okay, actually kind of makes sense, but until you realize that the normal A-18 has 326 RPM and the twin A-18 has, according to this, is that, no, that's more than, even more than 3 times the rate of fire. Anyway, Harrier GR.1, I mean, for 50 points you have a pretty good payload, don't get me wrong, but you have horrible survivability. Not only are you slow, you also have no ECM. And 4 per card isn't quite good enough. If you got 5 or maybe even 6 per card, okay, but like, most of the time one-way tickets. Because since you're neither fast nor do you have ECM, you also just fly into non-radar infrared AA, you know, Strelas, etc. And other than that, you have no extra utility. I've seen some people use this, but I do not think this is very good. Also, someone tell me what GR stands for. I could Google this right now, but I'm too lazy. And by the time this video is up, I might have already Googled it, so yeah. 1 second. GR.3. Very, very similar to the American Harrier. I believe you have slightly better rocket pods. It's unfortunate that I'm doing this in the deck building because I need to look at the availability, so I can't compare this to different nations. I know there's currently an overlay up, but okay, so you have 10% less ECM, the British one. You have slightly fewer missiles that are essentially the exact same otherwise. Yeah, for all intents and purposes, a slightly worse American Harrier. So, for 5 points less, ugh, not really amazing. And honestly, this is C Harrier, I believe, the American rocket pod one. So honestly, that's a whole tier lower. 10% ECM loss. Yeah, it's only for 5 points. 10% more ECM is quite a big deal, honestly. Harrier GR.5. Now this is actually, whoa! I never realized that those are, with the exception of the A-18, the exact same planes, just different bombs. I basically never used this plane, so I didn't even realize that it has 40% ECM. Like, this has the same payload as the Hornet. I wouldn't say significantly, but noticeably slower, with 750 instead of 1000, of course, which for bombers or most planes, not all, but most planes, is worse. You prefer to be faster, of course. But the thing is, you come with the same availability. And I've said this previously, card availability is very important for planes. Or card efficiency, I should say, or card, maybe not even card efficiency, but more like card value. Because very often, planes, of course, being so volatile in terms of their survivability, right? Like 2 hits from nearly every kind of AA system will suddenly kill you. A bad roll of RNG and bam, you got crit 1 shot. Your 60% ECM plane got killed by a 40-point Coop M, right? These kind of sudden, very unlucky rolls that suddenly loses you a whole card doesn't really happen that often with other units, right? So getting more value out of a card of planes is not the most important thing, but worth pointing out. That's why the KWS is so good, right? Besides the fact that for the F4F KWS, besides for the fact that for 140 points, coming 2 on veteran, it is very deadly, you get 2 per card, right? If the KWS was 1 per card on elite and 130 points, right, the individual plane might be much stronger and cheaper on top of that, but you would only get 1, right? So getting 2 on elite, on veteran rather, is still better. So that's why being the 25 points cheaper here is not as big of a deal as if, let's say, it was the same price but you suddenly got 3 per card. That would probably be a bigger deal in my eyes. That said, it is not particularly good. I mean, it's fine, right? The payload is good for 100 points, but you have to look at it that way, right? It's a unit you buy 2 of at maximum per game. 100 points is a lot, but when you consider the fact that per minute you get 105 points in a 40-minute game, that's 4,200 points, I think. So that's not even it's 1/42th of your total income, and that ignores the 1,000 starting points, right? So 20 points more or less, not a huge deal, all things considered, given that you only buy 2. It should make a significantly better helo hunter, however, but it's just that the payload, and yeah, with bombers you want to be fast in and fast out, because you also want your opponent to give much lower time to react, much lower time to move the units that are getting bombed, etc. GR7, I can only repeat myself from the last time. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. It used to be a very, very meta-defining plane, even back in, I wanna say, 2015. I would say like late 2015, maybe even early 2016 as well, when blue mixed decks were, I wouldn't say at their height, because I would say at the height of the meta, right? When they were more or less undoubtedly the strongest decks. Like first mixed moto, then mixed mech, and then mixed armored, all very, very strong decks. One of the many reasons was the Harrier GR.7. Laser guided bombs had essentially 95%, not exactly 100%, but close to 100% chance to hit the target dead on. That means that, and with 40 HE in total, that means it also was, I think, only 100 points. It didn't matter if it was up or down with it, right? So you would always see 2. It means that with 100% chance, or like let's say 95% chance, you would one-shot any tank that had less than 4 top armor, even if it was full HP. And that's huge, right? Because unlike ATGM planes, it's 100% chance. Leopard 2A5, 3 top armor. Leclerc, 3 top armor. Abrams's below the M1A1HA, 3 top armor, or lower. All Leopard 2s, of course, 3 top armor. Q Marushiki, 3 top armor. K1, 3 top armor. Most notably on Blue 4, many tanks had 3 top armor. And that was on top of, especially early on when this was meta, on top of super heavies not being that common. So that gave Red Force sort of an edge, because many of the T-72s, especially like the medium tanks onwards, already had 4 top armor, right? The T-72B1, T-72M1 Wilk, and upwards, they all had 4 top armor already. Which doesn't mean that we're immune, right? They still took, like, I believe it was 8 or maybe even 9 damage. Same goes for BU, T90, etc. And the UM, of course, still to this day, having only 3 top armor, would get 1 shot. So that plane was incredibly deadly. And the fact that if you were good at microing, you could split the salvos. So even if you didn't want to kill a tank, you could target 4 individual ground units, and even though the individual splash damage of the bombs was low, you could hit like 4 parts of a whole convoy and thus kill like half the convoy. So that's why 4 of these 10 HE bombs is, if you have line of sight, better, if you're good, better, or was, when it had 100% accuracy, better at like stopping an assault than, you know, one of these. So the GR7, and still to this day, just a lot less consistent, but offered incredible utility against ground targets. Or if like there was a town fight going on and you spotted infantry, you could right click on the infantry and the infantry was essentially dead. So unlike ATGM planes, not only were you incredibly consistent against tanks, you had a lot of utility against any other ground target type as well. And it was also decent at helo hunting, and still is, right? Twin Aiden, like I said, a Vulcan stat clone. Good speed for killing helos. Of course, against ground targets, you might prefer to be faster, although the low speed also made it easier to split the paveways, because then you wouldn't overshoot the targets as quickly. Yeah, back in the day, easy S tier, or if it was still as it was back in the day, it would be easy S tier. These days, not so much, but I think it is a bit underrated. Even if it misses, first of all, you have 4 of them, and so not all of them. You have to be really unlucky for all of them to miss, and any hit will instantly stun and panic a tank as well, which you have to keep in mind. But there's of course still the utility of hitting multiple targets. Yeah, but unlike the Kernels, which is the king, blind bombing, you will not do a lot of damage with that. Jaguar GR.1. I know I use the word underrated a lot, and most of the time, like in the previous one, I'm like, somewhat underrated. I think when I say this is underrated, I think that most people realize it's not really that bad, but you just have better choices, right? Plane tabs for most of the decks will very often look very, very similar because there's a clear top 6 or 7 planes that are clearly the best. So even if another plane, like the 8th best plane, is still pretty good, you will just not see it because the other 7 are so much better. But this is, in my eyes, truly underrated. Like, I'm a true hipster about this plane. And I'm not saying like, oh, I'm the first one to use this. Clearly I'm not. Obviously I'm not. But besides, Commonwealth being seen very rarely, even among Commonwealth players, you see this virtually never. Like, for 60 points, you're very fast, you get 4 per card, you have 20% ECM. That's a lot, given that you're only 60 points, right? 20% ECM is a lot for 60 points. But you're, again, also very fast, so you tend to not, be out for very long. So the way you generally don't reduce this on its own unless you know there's no AA in the area or there's no ASF up at the moment. Or you just know, there's something in this forest that you need to kill. But other than that, you either use this in swarms or in conjunction with other planes. Say you spotted 1 or 2 AA pieces in a forest or something. Let's say you want to bomb something with your F-111C. You send 1 or maybe even 2 ideally, or more if you already have them, out. Bomb the positions where the AA is. And especially if you're pretty on target, either the plane will die, either the AA will die, or not shoot because it's moving, unless it is a stabilizer, of course, or shoot at the Jaguars instead of the F-111C, in which case the F-111C gets out alive and the Jaguars get out either alive damaged or dead, or damaged and the AA is also dead, depending on what AA it is. Incredibly good plane, one of the best cluster planes in the game, honestly. And this kind of depends more on the rest of your air type, but depending on what other planes you have access to, it might even be the best one in my eyes. So versatile. And of course, as any cluster plane, if there's a super heavy on low HP or something, a vehicle on low HP, or you try to snipe a Jeep CV or something, even just 2 cluster bombs can do some work. And contrary to some other planes, yes, 2 cluster planes isn't a lot, but you get 4 of these planes and they cost only 60 points. And like, this plane has like the same survivability as like a Peace Rhine. Peace Rhine also has 20% ECM, 100 points. And this one is even faster. It has a worse turn radius and of course no missiles, but incredibly underrated unit in my eyes. And I'll die on this hill. I'll die on putting this in the A tier. I'll fucking do it. I know there's people like, oh, Razzmann is such an idiot, puts this in A tier. I'll fucking die on this hill. Jaguar GR.1A. It's solid. The main issue on this plane is actually the range on its missiles, because given how fast this is actually one of the lowest range semi-active missiles, AT missiles on a plane. Most have 1 or 2 steps more. Are there any other with semi-active in Commonwealth? I don't want to switch thingies again, but most have like 3,325 or 3,500. I think the MiG-27, the base one, has 2,975. But the thing you have to keep in mind is this is also 1,000 kmh fast, right? The Harrier, the American one, for example, with the Mavericks, is only 75 kmh. The MiG-27 is only 900. So what happens is, if you don't dive an enemy tank or ground unit, i.e. you right-click on it and the Jaguar also goes for a gun run, meaning that it'll fly down and thus, of course, its flight path will become a curve, so the actual distance between you and the tank gets traversed in a longer amount of time, meaning you actually get the chance to fire the second missile off. If you don't do that, i.e. you only right-click, let's say, for the plane to fly somewhere, i.e. fly past it or something, you will fly over the tank, get the first missile out, and before you can get the second missile out on the same target, you're past the target already. Which also means that if your opponent is paying attention and sees this plane coming in and realizes it's going for their target, driving, and even better, fast moving towards the Jaguar, will most likely lead to the Jaguar not being able to get the second AJ168 out. Because once again, the plane flies so fast towards, or the distance gets reduced in such a quick, low amount of time that the missile doesn't hit it before you're past the tank already. I hope you get what I mean, right? But that's the one issue of this plane. It's very fast, not very nimble as well with this huge turn radius. Not a big problem on a cluster bomber, of course, but it is a problem with this plane. The 20%, the coming 200 lead, of course, mostly solves the fact that it's not consistent, but it still fairly frequently misses the first missile, which makes being able to hit the second one once again a lot more important. And of course, the high speed also means at the same time picking of 2 targets in the same run, also very, very hard. It does have good survivability, of course, 30% ECM, very fast. But can just be frustrating to use sometimes because of how awkward it is due to its high speed, low turn radius, and low range on the missiles. I can't scroll down further, by the way, so you will not see these other unit pictures. Mirage 3, what is this supposed to mean? 30A, 1110A, 30A, or is this ILL0A? I assume this is supposed to be Roman numeral 3, but like, can we just talk about Mirages for a second? You have Mirage F1C, F1C 200, Mirage 2000, Mirage Roman numeral 3C, Mirage, call these Arabic numbers, right? 5F, and then you have 30, 30. I don't get it, man. I don't get it. Anyway, Commonwealth. Mirage 30F. Not very good. I've said it, multiple times. Oh, yeah, like, oh no, it's actually, I was tapped out, so I was going off memory. There we go. No, I said it multiple times, right? Many low HE bombs a lot worse than a single high HE bombs. Like, granted, it is only 65 points, but you only get 3, which, look at, even the Jaguar comes at 4, but this one, if it came at 4, it would be better, of course, but 3 is already low. 6 10 HE bombs is abysmal. Like, not only do you not carry a lot of bombs, the individual splash radius of this is tiny. You have to be essentially on point for this to hit. And then you only get 6, and you only come with 3 per card with no ECM. Nope. Wait, did I forgot something. Yes. If you already wrote a comment about this, you may now delete it. Yes, there we go. A and Z. The Mirage F. Interesting veterancy. It is not particularly good. Maybe you remember like years ago where I played ANZAC Armored in ranked, and I'm not sure if I reached Colonel or Brigadier General. I played ANZAC Armored in ranked, I believe with only 1 loss against Putin. And my ASF setup, of course, isn't amazing. I also use this, and this is not a very good one. You get only 1. It's not even long range, right? At 5,600 meters, it's not particular. Like, you get outranged by virtually any other missile easily. Even the low-end Sparrows outrange you, right? Massively. They are only 5 HE, so even if you hit your single one that you have, granted, if you have a second one, I don't even know if you might get it out before you're past the plane. But, even if this hits, a hit of the magic, you will still not kill the plane. So either you have to hit with the second one or hit with a Defa, which you most likely will, because once again, it's a Vulcan stat clone. But like, it should be okay at helo hunting, right? Vulcan, it has SRAMs and it has a decent turn radius, but also very low time over target. if it came out 300 leads, sure, but at this stage, I can't really say it's a particularly good plane. Is this a... 1 second. Is there... I'm figuring out if this is an O or a 0. I think the font doesn't really properly distinguish between that. Like, can you make out what's an O and what's a 0 here? The real struggle. I'm gonna assume this is a 0 actually, but I don't know, dude. Harrier would be amazing if it had stealth. It doesn't have stealth. That's what kills this plane. Of course, killing it doesn't mean it's suddenly dog shit, but like, it comes with super card, nice. It is affordable, nice. It has extra utility in forms of helo hunting, nice. Due to coming low to per card, it comes low veterancy, but the missiles still have very good base accuracy, and while not maximum, still good range, ultra nice. Right? It's because if you look at Voodoo, right, also comes 2 down with it, but 50% base accuracy. If you ever use this, you know this tends to miss a lot. But the Harrier, of course, with 70% base accuracy, will not miss that nearly as much. So that's ultra pogged. 40% ECM, granted, not amazing, but you are 2 per card and affordable, so fine. No stealth whatsoever, not nice. I said this all the time about Seed. If it has stealth, your opponent will detect you later. If your opponent detects you later, they have less time to turn their radar AA off. You might say, well, if my seed is spotted early, it means the enemy turns its AA off early, and as such, you know, it still did its job. I mean, yes, you're right, but what's better than forcing the enemy to turn their AA off? You killing it. So it's by far not useless, right? It's still, you know, assuming you have the space for a seaplane, still better than no seaplane, of course. But if it had stealth, it would be like a, especially in like 1 versus 1s where, you know, you don't want to, you know, spend the whole card on like 1 high tier A seaplane or something. It would be like a very, very good seaplane. But yeah, no stealth, coupled with the fact that it's 75 kmh and not 900 or 1000 even, means that you give your opponent even more time. Which, you know, at least it's not like 4200 meter range on its missiles, which, you know, let's say the Wild Weasel has. But, you know, yeah, just no stealth is very sad. I'm not sure how to rank this. I'm going to assume that your opponents, when I rank this, I generally assume that your opponents know what they're doing. So I'm gonna put this in the C tier. If you're playing against like average players or not so good players, might not be a big deal at all. Also, I don't know if C is like an acronym here or, I don't think it is. Like if your opponent is like average or not very good or something, your seatplane not having stealth might not be any deal whatsoever, right? But once again, I'm gonna assume your opponent is capable, so it's gonna significantly weaken this plane. Your helo hunter Harrier, it's 10% ECM is kind of sad, I'm not gonna lie. You get 4 M9s, you have a decent turn radius, you have the twin 8, which is good. Not the best time over target. Speed is good for pure helo hunting, but what differentiates okay helo hunters versus amazing helo hunters is either the fact that they do something else at the same time. See Harrier GR.7, for example, or like the Rocketbot Harrier. Or the fact that, you know, they are still very capable versus planes. Let's look at Lazur or the Finnish MiG-21Bis or the L-17K, right? If they get into range against enemy planes, that plane is in serious trouble. The Sea Harrier, not so much. Like again, Vulcan and A9s, not too bad, but like The L-17s and etc. and the Lazurs, they have 2 sets of missiles, right? So the burst damage is much higher than the one on the Sea Harrier, which versus helos, once again, might not matter as much because with the lower speed and the Vulcan set gun, you have time to gun run, blah blah blah. Versus planes, you don't have the time. And of course, the other thing is, if you have it circling already, or you go after a bomber, the lower speed means harder time to catch up or get into range before the enemy evacs. So yeah. The main advantage it has is coming 3 on veteran, right? If you look at a GR3, it only comes 2 on veteran or 3 trained. So you have the availability difference there. I probably just would go 3 Harriers down with it or something, because having 2 versus 4 AIM-9s, honestly, most of the time not a big deal, because relatively rarely do you do more than 1 pass on a plane, because staying out longer is usually too risky. Tornado F2, very good plane. Coming on elite, which let me check, means that the accuracy on those missiles changes from 50 to 73. Compare this to, let's look at the F-15A Eagle, right? The F-15A Eagle comes on veteran, right? Also 50% base accuracy. What does that accuracy turn into? Well, 66. That's 7% difference. I say this all the time. The accuracy bonus difference you get from veterancy becomes bigger from, you know, the higher the step is. Meaning, as an example, right? Or it never gets slower. Sometimes it's the same, but most of the time it's the highest. To put it that way, right? 50% base accuracy. From trained, rookie to trained is 50 to 54%, which is 4% increase. Trained to hardened, 54 to 60, 6% increase. Hardened to veteran, 60 to 66, again 6% increase. Veteran to elite, 66 to 73, 7% increase, right? And that's basically across the board, that the veteran to elite jump is always the biggest or equal to hardened to veteran. Sometimes it's the same, but usually it's the biggest. And then, you know, the Tornado is cheaper, same ECM. Worst gun, not relevant. I believe only 2 AIM-9s. That's just right. You gain only 2 of the short range missiles, but like, can you see any of this? Oh, you can see like that thing. AIM-9Ls are the same. Long range missiles, the same. Gun, sure, Tornado is worse, but who cares? Turn radius, sure, Tornado is worse, but again, who really cares? The gun, while it is nice to have, usually not a huge difference once you get into like the high vet or expensive ASFs. For 15 points less. Just, yeah. Hopefully you don't need to explain this to you. Significantly better plane. And I'm gonna put this into the A tier, honestly. Tornado F3. For 20 points, you lose 1 step in veterancy, so this is now actually more comparable to the F-15A. For 5 points more, you now have the same amount of missiles. Again, compared to the F-15A, your long-range missiles actually have 700 meters more range, and you get 10% more accuracy. So for 5 points more, in most scenarios, simply better F-15A Eagle now. But honestly, still not as good as the F2. And a GR.1. Honestly not the worst plane. It has bigger, you have to keep in mind here, right? This one are now 8 AP cluster bombs. Most cluster bombs you'll see have 6 AP, like this one. The one on the Tornado Jaguar.1 are IBL755s instead of BL755. I don't know, improved or whatever the I stands for, I don't care. But you have 2 more AP. I believe actually, but I never checked to make sure. I believe the radius on cluster bombs are more or less, if not exactly the same across the board. But I actually never verified for myself. It is. Or at least, you know, the one used by the Jaguar as well as the one used by the Tornado. And actually, the one used by the big Vigan, right, with the 10 AP cluster bombs, is a bit bigger, but not significantly. But yeah, 8 AP, so that's a significant increase, of course. So yeah, it's if this had like sky flashes instead of the AIM-9s, would be really dope. But that's not how it is. It's a bit like the F-16Cs, right? It's like a, you know, Helo Hunter or something like that, and you know, cluster planes if you want, cluster bomber if you need it. But yeah, it is like those are big clusters, right? They do hurt a lot more than the 6 AP ones. Like, to put it into perspective, the 6 AP ones, if they hit like at the center, will deal 2-3 top armor, 2.5 damage. The 8 AP ones will deal 3.5 damage, right? So 1 point damage more. And you have okay ECM, but yeah, it's just I can't with good conscience put this into the same tier as the MiG-29M. I ran this plane in the past, but it's just for most of the time for 130 points a glorified cluster plane. The thing is, the multi-role utility only comes into play when you already bought it. But then again, when do you buy this, right? If you want to cluster plane something, but then it doesn't even cover that much. So yeah, just use a Jaguar GR.1, honestly. Okay, that is Commonwealth done with. So let's go back to something red for, huh? Sure, so Eastern Bloc. Oh my goodness. I have to admit, I virtually never use the planes that have the anti-air rockets, right? These pew 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 rocket pods, you know, against planes and helos. Every now and then I see them being used, or I watch someone use them, and you know, it's fun for shits and giggles, but in reality, it's just they can dish out a lot of damage, right? But it's just I'm just gonna put this into the D here because low range, low speed. You get 6 of them on rookie, but like Delfin. Okay, this is interesting. This is actually very interesting. 5 card base. Keep in mind, Eastern Bloc does not gonna get an availability bonus, but Baltic Front does. You know, 5 card Delfin. There's a single role for this plane, or the main role of this plane is to sponge, especially in Red for Airborne, which I've seen Nick play a lot. This is actually quite an important plane because for 30 points, you have to keep that in mind. You get a plane that can act as a sponge for the other planes, right? Because generally speaking, planes are in the vicinity or in the range of anti-air for only a limited amount of time. If you can bait a missile from, let's say, a Book or a Patriot with this Delfin, or maybe even 2 because your opponent is microing, that then means that, you know, the plane that came behind the Delfin gets out its payload without even being shot at because the AA was busy shooting at a Delfin, or Delfins, plural, given that they die like flies. And that's the main role, right? And if they don't have AA, because not only you generally don't just fly them out, you give them a target, right? If they don't have AA, or they're moving their AA or not paying attention, then the Delfins just drop their bombs, presumably on their AA, and maybe even kill them if you're not paying attention or something. So, yeah. Where do I place them though? Because they are so niche. Hold up, index. Niche units, C tier, there we go. Like, for that niche, they are very good. But I would only really run them in airport decks. Can't really say the same thing about this one because you get fewer and they cost 20 points more. Like, that's a lot, right? That's 66% price increase. Albatros. That's a big bruh moment. Slow 2HE. It's actually, oh, it's just like the Harrier that we had earlier. The first Harrier, the GR.1? Yeah. Once again, I don't know if that's ZO or C0. Or Z. Given that this is an A, I assume it's an O. The Albatros is essentially like a much worse Hawk, because it has the same payload, it costs the same price, same ECM. I believe even the same missiles, but like 300 km/h slower. This is... I just... Oh... Now you've done it, Eugen. Like, just look at this. Look at this. Same missiles, same bombs. Worse gun? Question mark? Worse gun. Granted, the Albatros has a Vulcan clone, the Hawk doesn't. Same fuel, same more target, same ECM, but like 300 km/h faster. That is such a huge difference. It's just massive how much of a difference it makes. But you're probably aware. That said, in one scenario that lower speed can be nice in this for key launching, because with the Vulcan side clone, right, and coming on the veteran if you want to, you can actually fairly reasonably hunt helos, but you're gonna die like a fly otherwise. And honestly, this is not enough to like really redeem this plane, to be honest with you. This is a relatively fast rocket pod plane, right? 50 points, 750 km/h. Honestly, they're fine rocket pods to deal snipe AA inside or single infantry squads. Yeah, like 3 per card is nice, but like given that it's only 50 points and you know it does have the speed, honestly I've seen worse planes. This is a very good bomber. Yes, it does have only 12 HE, but in case you don't know, that's napalm and HE. Every other napalm plane has no HE, right? I think they deal like 1 HE damage on impact. Like technically they actually deal a bit, but I'm not certain. But like this actually deals 12 HE damage and leaves napalm behind. Let me actually just check something real quick. So you have, you know, the damage effect, and you know, if you want to snipe a CV, or like, you know, there's a CV in that corner, and it can only be in that corner. Even if you don't kill it, you deny the spot for a while at least. And that is really useful. It actually also has the exact same splash radius as 15 HE bombs, whereas other 12 HE bombs, like the 24M, in before, it actually also has the same. Yep, the SU-24M, which, okay, sorry, it has 11 HE, not 12, 11, but it has a significantly lower, right? So one would assume that the 12 HE bombs and the MiG-29 would also be much, or like somewhere in between that. But it actually has the same radius as 15 HE bombs, which is good. And yeah, 30% ECM is pretty nice. And you know, with the same splash damage and the napalm on top of that, it actually tends to deal significantly more damage than 15 HE bombs. Honestly, one of the better bombers in the game. Also, I just noticed they capitalized the I here. Is that a Czech thing? No, it's not a Czech thing. Okay, thanks, Eugen. Now, if you wanna, is this where it is? Quick firing guns of small caliber, they trade high armor penetration for better rate of fire, deadly to infantry and armor. Hold up, there's someone posted that on Reddit a couple of weeks ago. Is this on this thing? Hold up. I'm sorry for those changing topics here, but like Gatling gun, I think it's that one. Multiple barreled rotary autocannons. They provide tremendous firepower of the shortest span of time. Usually used by plays or anti-air units. They are quickly running out of ammos. This gets me every time, man. I'm not gonna apologize again, because this whole channel is scuffed anyway. MiG-17F. Press F for this plane because it's garbage. 411 HE bombs is even worse than 215 HE bombs. Yes, it's faster, but well, 215 HE bombs at least. But you don't even get 4 of them. That's the saddest part here. It is faster than like the Harrier and the Albatros, but that's a funny one. Okay, so you have 5 HE fire and forget versus planes only with the same range as AIM-9Ms or the 73A Wimples, right? These ones. But you have 35% accuracy, which on elite changes to 55. Well, not too bad. Not too bad. It could be worse. Could be worse. Which is 1% more than. Oh no, this is 60 base accuracy. Yeah, never mind. But you're not particularly fast. You have 4 of them and literally no other utility other than shooting at planes. If it was fast, like 1000 kmh at least, I could see it as like an early game scout or something, similarly to the Voodoo, but it just isn't. And the Voodoo can even shoot at helos, even if it has even lower accuracy. I would take that any day of the week. Oh my god, one of the many MiG-21Bises. There's actually 2 of them. 3 on hardened with only 1 set of missiles. It's a late Molnius, which you might think is better, but might actually be a bit worse. You have acceptable ECM. Of course, being a sexy MiG-21, you're also 1000 kmh fast. I'm sorry, but MiG-21s are just very sexy. One of the most beautiful looking planes, in my eyes. But like 3, you don't even come on lead, so. Compared to the Lazur, which for the same price comes on veteran, right? For the same availability, so sure, C tier, fine. It's not like absolute dog shit, The Czech one, 3 on veteran, worse missiles, but not as quote unquote bad as base Molnius. So actually, let's check, right? 50% on hardened versus 40% on the veteran. 50% on hardened turns to 60%. 40% on veteran turns to 54%. So the Polish MiG-21Bis is more accurate, but also more expensive. MiG-21M. Don't talk to me. Nah, I think honestly I'm gonna give this C tier because it has the bigger napalm bombs. The NATO napalm bombs all have 340 or something like that kilogram, and the carry they cover a lower amount of ground. I believe I actually never confirmed that, but I believe that is actually the case. Does it actually check that or show that in the armory tool? I'm not sure if it does. It does actually, yeah. I'm assuming that splash radius doesn't only mean like the impact of the bomb, but also the napalm afterwards. But if that's correct, then yes, they do cover a bigger ground. Is there actually more than another MiG-21M? I don't think there is. So if you want a log of a single bridge or something, 2 napalm bombs, like I said last time, not gonna do much, but they're at least bigger napalm bombs compared to NATO ones. So, and you're a 1000 kmh fast, right? Because it's very often that the slow ones, like the ANZAC trainer planes, whatever they were called again, like here the MB339CB, they're just so slow and no ECM that they just get intercepted or even killed by AA sometimes before they can even drop the bombs. So the MiG-21M is at least very fast. Even if it is a one-way ticket, sometimes it's still worth it. MiG-21ML, slightly worse than the Soviet MiG-21Bis rocket pod, I believe, because that one has 20% ECM, but honestly, still solid. Lazur, my favorite helo hunter in the game. Some people prefer the L-17K. But there's one difference. The Lazur has a low-end Molnius. Maybe I've mentioned this in one of the previous episodes, but these low-end Molnius, here 60s, have 1 second reload time, not 2 seconds like virtually every short-range missile 1 second, which means that in a single pass, you very often get 2 of these off against the same plane. And so you get at least usually 3 missiles off versus 1 helo, even if you don't gun run. And that massively increases the chances of it killing. It does have only 10% ECM. But versus helos, it is so consistent that it's worth it to me, even if it's just very easily gets killed by planes or AA. That's why I actually still prefer the L-17K in my mixed decks. And it's of course 10 points cheaper. MiG-21MF, yeah, the main difference compared to all the other rocket pod planes is of course that it carries 4 big rockets, which makes it usually worse against like single armor targets. Like, you know, I'm pretty sure because the thing with the, you know, these ones is you actually get 64 times 2 HE against like a target, right? And, you know, with the 30% accuracy. But with these ones, with having only 4 individual 30% accuracy against like armor targets, you will miss a couple of them, and the splash damage isn't huge enough to make up for that. So like 2 armor you'll probably kill, but like 3 or 4 armor you're gonna start to struggle, whereas this one won't. So this is a lot better against like stunning and panicking, like again convoys or bunched up units, and infantry or something, or even finding positioning. Sometimes it might be better. So it has a slightly different usage, arguably better, arguably worse, depending on what you want. And it reloads very, very quickly. Yeah. But yeah, it's you can really harass your opponent if they, you know, don't have proper anti-air. MiG-23BN. Not only does, you know, being a MiG-23, it look very similar to the MiG-27, it plays very similar. Same speed, same missiles, but you don't have a heat gun. You have some Molniers, but and for all intents and purposes, just worse MiG-27. So yeah, still C tier though, because it's, you know, certainly not like garbage tier. But yeah, not very good. MiG-23ML. Funny thing is, those Wimples actually fly much faster than most of the other semi-active missiles, but you do have a 1 second reload time. But I believe you still get a second one out earlier because of just how fast it flies. You get 200 lead for 100 points. You only have 10% ECM, but this is actually incredibly deadly for its points. I think it's vastly underrated, but then again, it's probably just one of those planes that, you know, it's 6th or 7th best plane in the deck. So, you know, because everyone runs the same 5 planes, you just don't see it, even though it is pretty good. But I like to run it in Entente Mech, for example, where I run 3 class of ASFs, right? L19, MiG-23ML, and the L17K. But it's just very good versus planes, honestly, for its price. Especially just if you have trouble dealing with bombers or something, because they don't shoot back. Your ECM doesn't really matter as much, but you're, for 100 points, incredibly consistent and incredibly deadly. So yeah, of course, having 5 and 4 on the HE on the missiles respectively means that a hit on each doesn't quite kill a plane yet. It's always a bit unfortunate, but that's just how it is. This one would be pretty good if it came with 3 per card, and maybe it was a bit cheaper. But 2 per card and half the payload of the F-16 Block 5, which is a Danish cluster plane, with the same ECM for 20 points less, while the F-16 also carries AIM-9s. It's pretty sad, honestly. If you desperately want a cluster plane, I guess it can be fine, but coming only 2 per card, not so good. MiG-23MF, you come 3 high veterancy, but you have mediocre missiles and not coming on elite. And, you know, to put this into perspective, you know, on veterancy means that 40% changes to 54% accuracy, and the 50% on elite changes to 73 on these missiles, right? That's practically 19% accuracy difference. When on the set card it's 10%, just due to the extra step and, you know, the difference of bonus compared to the base accuracy, right? Yeah, I just now we're starting to come into the planes that are all like C and D tier, right? In the previous 2 episodes, we had a lot of B tier planes, right? A lot of planes here are always like, you know, you don't see that often, but it's still pretty good, blah blah blah. It's underrated, but now we actually get into the pretty bad planes. 3 on hard is just horrendous. Like, you have 48% accuracy on these R23R Wimples, and on the R60Ms you have 60% accuracy. I mean, you get 3, but like, no, please don't use this plane. It is cheap, but MiG-25 RBF, it's an okay bomber, right? You get 815 HP, which is pretty good. You have acceptable ECM, you're very fast. No other utility, but isn't really horrible, right? Because even like multi-role bombers like the MiG-29, like this one, using the R73As in a meaningful manner is not that common. It's nice to have, but it's not a huge deal. But I think the MiG-29 honestly is still better. This is just not a particularly good plane. I mean, it is fine, but like, you only get 2 R77s. So here's the deal, right? These are like essentially the same planes except for the long-range missiles, or technically medium-range missiles. I think long-range missiles would technically be like what the Tomcats and the MiG-31s have, but the only difference is the R27R versus the R77. R27, of course, being semi-active and having 700 meters more range. R77s being fire and forget. And of course, you get 6 more HE and a bit more suppression. Not that relevant. Although it can be if you have IGLAs that have 4 HE and then 6 plus 4 is 10. But when you shoot those, the IGLAs are usually not in range. But and I guess in some scenarios it matters, but for the sake of the argument, it's not that relevant. Because the secondary missiles have, of course, 5 HE. But here's the thing, having 2 fire and forget missiles, medium range, means that before you get into this range, 2 of these will hit. But that's the same case with the semi-active ones. The main difference is that yes, the second R77 will hit before the second semi-active would. But what I'm getting at is, if this was the KWS and you had a third one, you would also get a third one out. A fourth one you would not, on a head-on fight, of course. A fourth one you will not get out unless the enemy plane is very slow, I guess, or you're slow as well. But the thing is, being fire and forget is usually not that big of an advantage here. Because yes, you hit, or in theory might hit a bit earlier, you know, than the semi-active one would, but you also have lower accuracy because you're only hardened and not veteran. And that accuracy in practice is 76% versus 70%. So the Polish MiG-29 has 6% more accuracy on its missiles for a lower price, while the while also the R27R and the R77 don't really give, you know, they don't give each other much. You would say in German. Die geben sich nichts. There's not really practically a huge difference in a head-on fight. Of course, if you're trying to shoot down a plane that's flying away from you, a different story. But I think in reality, the higher accuracy and lower price on the MiG-27 on the Polish one is worth more. Now, honestly, I'll do it. I'll put this one in the C tier. Because first, the chance to hit your first missiles is the most important thing on planes. Because in head-on fights, it's very, very rare that you even get a second chance. So coming only on hardened and having only 2 R77s, not very good, especially when you compare this to the Jaguar 1 which for 10 points less comes on veteran with the same amount of R77s. And the same ECM. And I'm thinking, right? This is very similar to the Tornado F3, right? The Tornado F3 having, I believe, identical stats on the Sky Flash. Does it also have 50% accuracy? Let me check. I always forget because I never use it. Actually, also it's 50, huh? So it carries, of course, 4 additional ones compared to the MiG-29. Oh, no, we're not there yet. But 10% lower base accuracy for the same veterancy. Despite just being so much better than the F3, I don't really think it's in the same tier as like the Tornado F2 or the Block 52, you know? But it actually really is. Alright, Su-22M4. Once again, some active, like the Tornado, and the Jaguar, excuse me, same range. Also 30 AP, but more base accuracy. You only get 2, not on like down with that, only 1 on elite. But you're also slower, which in this case actually good, because you have a much easier time getting both missiles out. Only 10% ECM though. And yeah, it's just... I like to use this in Red for Marines, because you just don't get a lot of choice there. But other than that, it's just, you know... Like on elite, it's deadly, sure, but you also only have 10% ECM. And being semi-active, you have to go in much deeper than like a Seria would. This thing here is, I mean, for 5 points less, you gain ECM and lose a bit of AP, which honestly is better. But still not very good. Seria, however, perfectly fine, perfectly solid. It just isn't that survivable, right? It's not particularly fast. It has only 10% ECM, 20%, 30% ECM. There we go. It's just solid. It's fine. It's a good ATGM plane. That's it. The multi-role aspect is honestly pretty forgettable, because you also just don't want to be too risky with this. Basically, any deck that this is available in, this is really your only anti-tank plane, so you don't want to just send this out willy-nilly against helos, especially it's just not very good against helos as well. So you usually just reserve this purely for killing tanks, and it just tends to be relatively often a one-way ticket as well. Not a good bomber. 2, the payload, very good. 400 points as well, honestly pretty good. But you have 70-50 game age, and you don't have a very good turn radius. This is so easy to kill. I just can't stress how bad of the plane is actually. Like, it's not, okay. This is maybe exaggerating a bit, right? It's not like an abysmal god of a plane, but I think it looks a lot better than it actually is. And once again, of course, no other additional utility other than bombing, but compared it to like the Falcon, the Fighting Falcon, the Norwegian one or something, you tend to just dive in a lot deeper into enemy AHNets than the Fighting Falcon does. And with your worse turn radius, your lower speed, you're just in range a lot more. So 400 points, just very often a one-way ticket. I'm actually wondering, I never checked this. I don't think it's the case, but sometimes it feels like it drops the bombs slower as well. Let me actually check. So many Su-22M4s, Jesus Christ. Fighting Falcon. Norway. MK84s. Yeah, no, it should be... Oh, yes! Oh no, whoops, 1 second. Okay, no, it's exactly the same. I just looked at the wrong gun. Yeah, it's just in all the times I've used it, I've been so disappointed, because it's always a one-way ticket. The Eastern seaplane, it's solid. It has stealth. It has decent base accuracy and range. You know, 1400 meters is good. 60% base accuracy, given that you're coming untrained. Supercard is good. 30% ECM is a bit on the low side for seaplanes, but you're also only 90 points, right? You're a bit relatively slow, being only in SE22, of course. But you have stealth to make up for that. It's fine. It's a solid seaplane. And I just realized I have to... Honestly, I think all of the SE22M4s are also in the C tier, so I wouldn't even necessarily need to write which nation they belong to. Kind of hilarious. The Polish seaplane, I'm not a fan of this. Not a fan. It costs 10 points more. You have more ECM, but your missiles, while you carry 4, which means that you will shoot them out in a volley of 2. This does not go for ECR or the FA.2 or the MiG-21 right? This only goes for the Wild Weasel and the Polish one, I think. They fire them out in a volley of 2, similarly to like normal ATGM planes, but you have lower range. And honestly, in my eyes, that's not worth it. Like, if you fire them, you are, mathematically speaking, more consistent. You have a high chance of hitting your missile, but you have 700 meters low range, which means more time for your opponent to react. And yes, they are also more survivable, but I honestly think the East German one is just better. And I mean, the multi-role capabilities here are also honestly very negligible, but honestly, I think this just isn't as good. But honestly, still beat here, because at the end of the day, it's still a stealth, it's affordable to per card, and given that it is 2 per card, still consistent, right? Not like the Voodoo. Let's just finish off the Eastern Bloc airtype. SE25K. We had the SE25, of course, already for USSR. Gotta add CSSR because there's also a North Korean one. SE7B, one of the worst seaplanes in the game. Honestly, still C tier, because it is still a seaplane, right? And you can get 3 of them. And maybe you remember that game on Punch Bowl against Greyhound's check deck where he really bullied me with his plane spam. So you get 4 of them in check, I believe, or 3 upweighted in check, which is probably better. I have to actually add. Of course, it doesn't even carry the worst seat missile, right? It has actually more range and more repeat than like the 4,200 meter range ones, but like no stealth, low ECM. But yeah, this is once. Hold on a second. For 5 points more, you gain some time over target, but you. Oh no! I was gonna say the MiG-17 actually has more missiles, but no, there's just 2 sets of guns. And here I thought it had additional capabilities, but nope. It is bad though. It is bad. The BM is also pretty bad. I've seen some people try to make this useful, but it's just not good. There's actually no other BM, I believe, SE7. And the biggest napalm load on Red 4 end. One-way ticket though, and it's a slow one-way, like relatively slow one-way ticket. It does carry a huge payload, right? Just like the American Phantom, 8 bombs, but 8 big bombs, like bigger bombs. The American ones or like NATO ones are smaller. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend using this, but if you desperately want a lot of napalm, there's your napalm. So yeah, that's part 3. This is taking much longer than I thought, right? I was like, you know, there's not that many planes compared to like other stuff, but I think I spend a lot more time on individual planes than I would with like infantry and such, because they vary so much more, and there's, you know, with veterancy being so inconsistent, it's a lot more time to explain that. But you know, maybe you enjoyed. In any case, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Later.